I want to introduce a little bit about what the program looks like, what we're going to head towards tonight, and hopefully it'll be about an hour. We'll get you out of here. I'm George Krikard. I'm a QHS graduate of 1984, so if you do the math, I'm 48 years old. I'll give a little introduction behind the Building for Quincy committee that is putting the forum on tonight. We'll have a facilities review by Todd Moore, and he basically represents 3 architecture firms here in Quincy that have worked diligently over the last year figuring out what we need and how we need to go about doing it here in Quincy. So he gives a phenomenal presentation on what the new facilities would look like. Joel Murphy, who's the business manager for the district, will speak a little bit behind the finances behind it and what a bond is and why we're doing it the way we're doing it. I have a couple of slides that I've put in just to deal with some frequently asked questions, and I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but I don't want people to leave going, gosh, I wish I would have asked that. So just interacting in the community thus far, over the last 2 to 3 weeks since we've been working on this, we hear some common questions, so I thought we'd hit those. And then we'll open it up to a question and answer session. And I just want to, we need to be mindful of the John Wood facility. You can see there's kind of a queuing line. There's 2 microphones on each end, and we won't have enough people, I think, to fill up both lines and go up the hallways. We just need to keep the stairways clear when that happens, just in case something breaks out and we need to get out of here in a hurry. So by code or law or whatever it is, we need to keep the aisles clear. So this process really for me started back in February of 2014 with what they call the Facilities Planning Committee. The superintendent, Steve Cobb, wanted to put together basically a community group consisting of not only citizens of Quincy, but also staff of the Quincy Public Schools to look at our current facilities, see what the downside of the current facilities are, and look at possibly some new facilities, and then see if that would possibly help or solve some of our issues or problems. We basically met from February to June of 2014. There was probably 20 to 25 of us that met, and as I said, there were almost as many architecturally well-dressed people in the room as well, kind of guiding us through and answering our sometimes very difficult questions that we threw their way. We started with a public questionnaire that was basically answered by 1,700 or over 1,700 citizens of Quincy that basically, I think it was just 7 questions. It basically said, do you want new schools? Do you want old schools? Do you want a combination of both? How many kids per classroom? How big a school do you want it to be as far as number of students? And then also what the grade configuration is, K through 6, K through 5, K through 12, K through college. What does it look like? So based on those 7 questions then, we kind of had a footprint to go on and to guide us through a little bit of our talking for 2 points. Number one is to understand where the citizens of Quincy sit on the Quincy Public School facilities. And then number 2 also is tell us as a group maybe what kind of education we need, because we were educated as we went through this process as what does the ideal school system and school situation look like. So we used it not only for educating us as to what the public thought, but also to figure out what kind of education we as the public and you as the public need as we go through making our decisions with the new schools. So we finished basically with a 5 new grade school plan, and Todd Moore will speak to that in a couple minutes. The planning committee basically had 4 musts. We went through it and we said, gee, how do we start? I mean, it was a wide open floor. Do we want new buildings for everything? Do we want one big, huge new building? Do we want 800 new buildings? I mean, it was really wide open. And so we said, we have to start somewhere. What do we want? What are the main goals? And no matter how this all falls out, no matter what we're going to do for new or old buildings, what do we want to accomplish? And the 4 things that really became what I called musts were 9th grade must get out to the high school. There's an issue now. I've got a 9th grader now. I've got one in senior high. It's a different transition. You're still sort of in the junior high, and yet you're a high school student. A lot of the sports and everything else take place out at the high school. Some of the upper level classes take place at the high school. So really getting the high school together, 9 through 12, was one of the things we looked at. Quincy Junior High School as a building stays. It's a beautiful building. It's got fine points to it. It's got a few down points to it. But it is a building stays. Now, does it stay as a junior high? Does it switch to something else? But that was one of the things that we said, really, we didn't think we could do anything but keep the junior high building as a building, and again, it's going to probably stay as a junior high, but that was one of the things we talked about, is what do we want the junior high building to be down the line. The other thing is looking at the size of the classrooms, and if you look at Baldwin, we have classroom sizes, and of course that was built as basically the high school. We have classroom sizes that Todd will be able to speak to more efficiently than I will, but I think they're from about 450 square feet up to about 600 square feet. And so we decided, looking at the modern classroom and what that looks like and what the teachers needed for space and what our kids would be best educated in, we decided 900 square foot classrooms is kind of what we wanted to look at, holding about 25 students per class. So based on those 4 ground rules then, we went forward and basically gave the suits and ties some time to figure out what we needed to do and how we needed to do it, and what different options we had. And we worked them pretty hard. They did a phenomenal job taking the information that we had, taking the questions we had, answering those questions, and coming back with some neat ideas. And every time they would come back, every time they would present us with something, we'd throw them another curveball, and they would go away, come back with some more plans. And it was really a phenomenal process to look at as we went through, just as far as the interaction between really the community. And again, except for being a huge public school supporter and a graduate of the public schools, I have no idea what a modern day school should look like. So it was a great learning experience for those of us on the committee, and the architecture team and the public school administration that and teachers that participated with us on the committee really helped us understand what size classroom do we need, what breakdown do we need, K through 5, K through 6, what does it best look like. And we used those 4 as a basis to come up with the 5 new elementary plan that Todd is going to speak to now. Once the school board decided that they would proceed with a referendum, then it became kind of the private citizens that needed to pick the ball up and run with it. And I have a slide a little bit later on that talks about why that is. Basically, the school board and the administrators are handicapped as far as being able to speak publicly, positively about the issue. They can present facts, but they cannot speak either really for or against the issue. So anyhow, I stayed on basically from the facilities committee and started the Building for Quincy committee. And we decided on the name Building for Quincy because that's really what we're doing. It's not just about the children that will be affected by the new K through 5 buildings, but it's really Quincy as a whole. It's recruiting to get people into businesses here in town. It's recruiting businesses to stay in town. One of the things I always ask is, what's the school system like? I'm a physician here at the Quincy Medical Group, and we have a constant need for physicians in town. And one of the questions that they ask is, what's your school district look like? And it's nice to be able to say we have a phenomenal public school program and a phenomenal parochial school program. People like choice. The stronger we can make the public schools, the stronger the parochial schools become as well. So it's a nice option, I think, to have 2 good school districts, 2 good school systems within the city the size of Quincy. So really we decided that we'd call it Building for Quincy because that's what we're doing. We're not building for K through 5. We're not building for next year's class. We're actually building for the town. We're building for the city of Quincy. That's all of us. So Building for Quincy. We started in August of 2014. We're a private group. We're here really just to disseminate information and to ask and answer questions or answer your questions that you may have, which is why we're here tonight. We also have a website called buildingforquincy.com. It's a phenomenal looking website for having been just up for about a week. We are constantly adding information to it, and we're going to be able to put some of Todd's slides from the architecture side on it later on, so people that aren't here tonight will have actually access to see what we're talking about with new buildings and the new schools. So I believe I will turn it over now to Todd, who will come up and talk about the groundwork and really how they walked us through and how we walk them through this process of getting to the point where we are today. After Todd speaks, Joel Murphy will come up and speak about the business side of things. I think I have 3 more slides, and then we'll head into the question and answer session. Todd?
All right. Thanks, George. Okay. Thank you, George. Before I get into the slideshow, I do want to just give you a little recap. And I know George briefly touched on the process and how the steering committee gave good direction to the design team. The design team being the 3 local architectural firms of Klingner & Associates, Pepping Stone Bach, and Architectnics. And I have to say, I've said this before in public presentations, but we compete every day, and yet on this project we came together and we drew on the strengths of each firm to put together a plan that you're going to see, and I think you're going to like it. When we started back in February, we presented a lot of data, a lot of information to the steering committee, probably more than they wanted, but it actually what it was what is in each of these schools. What is the physical conditions, the good and the bad? Do the schools address ADA? How is the parent drop-off different from the bus drop-off? And in a lot of cases it's the same, and that's a safety issue. We talked about the size of the classrooms, the square foot per student per classroom, and how that compares to national standards, state standards, et cetera. We talked about how could we reuse the buildings that we have, because that's what we hear a lot. Why can't we reuse or renovate or add on to? But we did an analysis and showed how a new building would fit on each of these sites. And believe it or not, we have a lot of school sites that are very tight. Parking is an issue. As I mentioned, the parent and bus drop-off is an issue. We talk about the security. Unfortunately, in today's world, security is extremely important, and we do have security in our schools, but we talked about how we address that. And we're going to show you how we address that in our new plan and how important that is. Going through the design process also, we met with 17 different groups. And I'm not going to name them all, but if you think of the K-2 teachers and the 3-5 teachers and the 6-8 and the 9-12, the science department at Quincy High School, the kitchen, the library, the maintenance department, the VOTEC, security, alternate school, special education. We met with each one of those groups and we asked them what is good and what is bad about what we have. And we got great information from the teachers and staff, which helped guide us to get to the point where we're at. George mentioned the limiting factors, the 900 square foot per classroom, 25 students per classroom. We're going to keep junior high school, a phenomenal building, as you know. It's been here for 80 years, and it's probably going to be here for another 80 years. And they just don't build them like that. So that was a criteria. And then also moving the ninth graders to Quincy High School is very important. As we started looking at the different options, whether to renovate, add on, build new, we did a life cycle cost analysis with each of these options. So if you think about it, if we're going to build or if we're going to add on to a school, we still have ongoing life safety costs in these old buildings. These buildings that are 42 to 124 years old, Quincy High School being the newest at 42 years old. We looked at how much health life safety dollars we're going to spend in each of these buildings if we do nothing. And the number that you've heard, we've estimated $66 million over the next 20 years. And people say, well, how do you come up with $66 million? Well, we spent $52 million in the last 20, and so that's a fact. Then we looked at all the different areas of the school, from the structure itself to the plumbing, to the HVAC, the electrical, and each of those areas we attributed a dollar amount to: roofs, windows, the exterior skin of the building. And when you look at all the schools, $66 million is what we're going to spend, in our opinion, over the next 20 years. So when you do a life cycle cost analysis, you look at, okay, if we're going to add on to a school, we still have these ongoing costs. But if you build new schools, we can avoid the health life safety dollars that are associated with those buildings. And we've projected, well, it's not projected, based on $66 million, if we do the plan that we have here, we can avoid $50 million of the 66. And they're saying, well, where's the other 16 at? Well, we're still going to maintain high school, we still have junior high school, and we're going to maintain part of Baldwin. The other thing that came out of the steering committee and out of this plan was every K-5 student gets a new building. And George may have mentioned that, I may not have heard him, but every student in K-5 gets a new building. They're going to experience the same environment. It's not going to be a renovated building, it's going to be a new building. So, based on that, let's get into the slideshow. I'm going to move off the side here. Hello? Okay. All right, let's just look at what a K-5 looks like. 5 new K-5s, 4-section schools. So what does 4-section mean? That's 4 kindergartners, 4 first grades, 4 second grades, and so forth. 5 new schools. 4 of them will be new. The 5th will be a Baldwin addition, which you'll see here in just a minute. We have 1 site, Monroe School. We've got plenty of ground there to build on. The other 3, we don't know yet. And there's areas that are being looked at, but we just don't know at this time where those other 3 are. And then, so that's 4. And what there we go. This particular slide here particularly pertains to the 4 because you see the gymnasium and cafeteria and so forth. This is for the 4 new. At Baldwin, we do not need the cafeteria, gymnasium, music areas. So let's go through it. 24, this is each new K-5, 24 900 square foot classrooms, each a 4-section building. We're accounting for the special educational spaces such as cross-category, sensory, and the ED-BD, spaces for speech, interventionalists, and teacher workroom. We have a 2,400 square foot music instructional space, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute because the plan you see is going to have a slight change to it based on some meetings we had here lately. But 5,000 square foot gymnasium for PE, and what that means is each child will have PE every day. And these gymnasiums, based on recent legislation that we just passed, will be a tornado safe room, and that's law. So those will be a tornado safe area. Kitchen, cafeteria, and assembly is 3,900 square feet. Seating for half of the students at one time, and it's anticipated there'd be a 3 lunch hour, so it'd be 3 different periods over an hour and a half. Administrative area, obviously you've got the administration, conference rooms, nurse, and so forth, but security checkpoint at the administrative area. And then what we call teaming activity rooms. These are multi-purpose spaces that classrooms can break out into these common areas and have maybe an art exhibit, a science fair, or a science experiment, and I'll explain that more in just a few minutes. But basically it's a versatile space that can be changed based on the educational programming. This is the plan. This is the K-5 plan, and you can see that it's a symmetrical, pretty much a symmetrical plan. This being, you see here, you got four classrooms, 4, so it's K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but that's what we have for right now. But 4 classrooms here in a group. Now, I think one of the best ways to explain this, Mike Carter from Klinger Associates did a great job in thinking about how we can think about this as community members. Each classroom is a family. You have these family of classrooms in a neighborhood. So we got a little breakout space here that the classrooms could break out into their neighborhood, and then as a group we have a community. So we have the same on the other side. So we have a community, and we have these neighborhoods and families. I think that's a very good way to look at this. You can see the teaming activity rooms that are out in the middle here. Likewise down here. We have 2 different setups. These are tables that are set up for maybe a group learning, but this may be an instructional period with some seating out in that common area. We have bathrooms in each of these different neighborhoods. Now, if you know anything about some of our schools, Madison's an example, Dewey's an example, the students have to go, when they want to use the restroom, they have to go to from the second floor down to the basement. That's where the restrooms are at. Now you say, well, we've been doing that for years. Well, this is better. When students can walk outside their classroom and use the restroom, that's a better situation. We've got cross-category rooms on each side. We've got a calming room with some special education needs here, maybe behavioral students. We have teacher workrooms. We have occupation physical therapy type rooms, sensory rooms. So we've accounted for each of the special educational spaces in each of these buildings. The other side is basically the same. On this side you have a reading recovery room because it's first grade. On this side we've got reading interventionalist type rooms. So let's move on to the more common areas. The gymnasium you can see here, that's obvious. Tornado safe room. We've got the cafeteria for seating, and we've got the music space. Now, I will tell you that we had a long discussion with the music department here after this plan was developed, and this is going to change right in here because as we developed the plan, we thought we knew what the curriculum and how the curriculum functioned in each of these schools. But after further talking to each of the music department heads, this is going to change into 2 900-square-foot music rooms, and then we're going to have 6 300-square-foot ensemble rooms, along with the music storage, musical instrument storage, and so forth. So it's not going to change this area very much. It's just going to change in configuration. So that was the change that was made. So in talking with the music department, they are in full agreement that will work if we do it that way. So let's talk about the administrative area. Main entrance. You walk in the building. We have a set of secure doors, and this is a 4-level secure building. So what do I mean by that? Well, this is the first line here. You'll walk in the building. You can't get past the doors, but security will check you into a common area or into a waiting area where you can then be released if you need to go to a classroom or if you need to see an administrator or the nurse for whatever reason, conference room and so forth. And in the event that someone gets past these doors and they shouldn't, we have a set of doors that actually will lock down, that actually lock down the communities. That's the second line. In an event in an unfortunate event, they get past that, we've got doors that will lock down the neighborhoods. So that's the third line of defense. And then obviously at the classrooms, we have locking doors. Now, in this particular wing here, what we show is a door between each classroom. So in that event, someone gets to this location, students can move between classrooms. So it's a 4-level secure type building. All right, let's move to the next screen. And this is what this building looks like in site plan. This is equivalent to a 2-city block area. So you can see the building footprint. And on here we have the bus drop-off. It's a kind of a staggered approach here. So students, if they're on the bus, they come in this way, go in the main entrance. If it's parent drop-off, we have parent drop-off on each end. Now, I will say that it may not necessarily look like this. This is conceptual, obviously, at this point, but parents can drop off. The students then can come into their respective community, whether they're a K2 or a 3-5. Administrative parking, it's not on the street, it's on the site. And then we've got playground area back in here. Now, I will say, too, that this is considered it's obviously a flat site. If the property that's purchased for one of these schools, if it's a sloping site, this building can be set up we would actually stack this wing on top of this wing for a 2-story building, then with elevator, stair towers, so forth. Then the common large areas would be on the lower level. If you're a bird, this is what it looks like from the air. We've got the bus drop-off out front, and then you can see it in perspective. You can see the communities on each end, and you can see these raised areas over the common part of the community. This is the gymnasium, this is the cafeteria area, and then it's symmetrical on the other end. What you'll notice here is the skylights. A lot of natural light coming into the building, and then also what we call clear story. These are raised up high sections that have a lot of light coming down through the clear story sections. Studies prove that daylighting, natural daylight, improves the ability of a student to learn. Likewise, the HVAC systems are very important, bringing in fresh air to the buildings, which each of these buildings will obviously have. The next few slides are just kind of a front view of the building. And what I tell everybody too, you look at the brick color and the different materials. Kind of what we think, or how we're thinking here, is each building may take on a different look based on the area that it's in. So it would more reflect the neighborhood that it might be located in. So the color of the brick, the type of materials that are used may change depending on the location of the building. This is just another front view of the building, and you can see a lot of glass up high in these clear stories, a lot of natural daylight. This is the main entrance. We call that Greenfield. That's not really not going to be the name of the school, but we just called it Greenfield because these buildings will be in a greenfield somewhere possibly, so we just called them Greenfields. But the end, you kind of see the grand entrance here with the canopy. That's something that could be a different component based depending on where the building's located. So these buildings aren't going to all look identical. They're going to take on the environment where they're located. Okay, let's talk about Baldwin School. This is the other K5. Okay, the darker shaded area, You have the gymnasium, kitchen, cafeteria, and the auditorium and music spaces. Those are going to stay. If you like the round room, it's going away. So anyway, the other, what we call Baldwin South, West, and North will all be torn down, and the new building is going to sit right in here, which I'll show you here on the next slide. Okay, this is the new building. Gymnasium, kitchen, cafeteria. This is where the round room used to be. This is the auditorium and music area. So we're going to tie in here where the round room was. And then, if you remember the other plan, it had the gymnasium and kitchen, cafeteria. We don't have that here because we already have those spaces. We already have those big common spaces, and that was one driving factor for keeping Baldwin School. We have these great spaces that we can reuse. So the building will adjoin here, so it's primarily classroom administrative areas. This will be the main entrance, and I'll show you here on the next slide how this looks in a little bit of a color view. Okay, Main Street is up here, 30th Street. This is the Circle Drive. We're going to connect onto the Circle Drive and come around the crest of the hill. As you know, it's a big embankment here. We're going to keep the steps that come up. The district spent a lot of money repairing those steps a few years ago. We're going to maintain those. But this is the main entrance. So if you're a parent dropping off a student, you would drive in here, drop your student off, and continue on around and out onto Main Street. Bus drop-off will remain the same. Students will be dropped off here, and they'll enter the building at this location. So it all ties in together. Okay, this is a bird's eye view. If you're out over the top of 30th Street looking down, you can see the Circle Drive. It comes around, main entrance, and then you see the same type of features. A lot of daylight coming through skylights and clear story windows with a raised section. This being the gym auditorium. This is if you were at 30th and Main Street, but elevated up at the same level of the building. Obviously, you're looking up the hill. It would look a little different than this, but this is the part you'd see. Here's the entrance. Here's the drive coming around, and you can see the raised up clear story with a lot of natural light coming in. But this is all new building here. This is the administrative and security area of the building. Okay, let's talk about Quincy High School. Okay, in order to accommodate the freshman class, 27 new classrooms, 24 of these will be new classrooms that are 900 square foot or larger. Minimum of 20 classrooms that are needed for the freshmen. 18 of these are located in the freshman addition, which you'll see here in just a minute. The new freshman area could be constructed as a tornado room, and when we say could, it will be because of the new legislation that was just passed. And then 7 of these classrooms are located in a 2-story addition on Building E. Building E is the southeast quadrant of the campus. It's the science building, and we're putting a 2-story classroom addition there. Special education instructional space, 3 special learning classrooms that are provided in the freshman addition. And then we're going to do some renovation work. The existing nurse's office in Building E will be converted into a teacher's workroom. The music building will not change. It's a great building and serves the students well, so we're not doing any work there. The gymnasium, today, well, we looked at different ways to do this. We've got a lot more kids at the building. Do we add on to the gymnasium, just make the gymnasium bigger? Well, we're rethinking how PE takes place, and it's more of a life skill type of event, so maybe aerobics. So we're going to put in a 1-story, 5,000 square foot addition to the south of Building C, which has 2 new fitness rooms, about 2,500 square feet, new locker rooms, and then we're going to convert an existing fitness room into a health classroom. The cafeteria is going to be expanded to accommodate the additional students. The kitchen and kitchen storage will also be expanded accordingly. And then in the administrative areas, we've got a new security checkpoint. When you come into Quincy High School, that's Building B. When you walk in the main entrance, you go through the security checkpoint. We're going to move that security outside the building. It's still attached, but we're securing the building. We want people to be checked before they actually physically get into the main building. And then we're going to do some renovation work in Building B, first floor, which is primarily for administrative registrars, dean's offices, and then a new conference room. We got some space for administration in Building B for guidance counselors, nurse's office, staff lounge, and in-building suspension classroom. And then we're going to put in a new technology lab, about 2,000 square foot in the freshman area. So what does that look like in aerial view? Main Street is out here. Here's where the students and faculty park. So here's the new secure entrance out front. This is the new freshman area. And when I say freshman area, I mean there'll be freshmen that'll be all over the building, but this is primarily the freshman area. And so it's located between the cafeteria building and the music building, single story. This is the two-story addition to Quincy High School, or to the Building E science building. And this is the new fitness area to the south of Building C. And what you'll notice here is a new drive. It comes across. Now we're going to go over the top of the ball diamond that's there right now, so we're going to have to relocate the ball diamond. But the buses will come in, they'll come up the hill, they'll make the turn, drop, which would probably be ninth graders because they're not driving yet. They'll be dropped off. A new secure entrance here. They will enter then the freshman area, and then buses will then go back out. And in plan view, this is the first floor plan. So freshman area, you can see all the classrooms and spaces. This is the cafeteria, kitchen, storage addition. This is the existing cafeteria now. We're going to expand that. And then we've got the secure entrance here for the freshman area. This is the new security portion on the north side of Building B. Here's the fitness rooms, new locker rooms. We got 4 new classrooms here on the first floor of Building E, which is the science building. And then you'll see the yellow spaces. Those are renovated areas, and we're taking out some lockers that are in this area. I think the figure is like 60% of the kids don't even use lockers anymore. So we're going to take the lockers out. Now that's still being studied. I don't want to say the lockers are going to go away and they're not going to have lockers. That's still something to be studied. But we're going to use this space. We've got a lot of excess corridor in here, so we're going to renovate that for the administrative area. And on the second level, the only thing that's happening on the second level is some new science labs up here on Building E, and then we just have the roof that's shown there solid. So from a perspective, this is the new freshman infill. You're looking from the north, looking south. Kind of southwest here. You can see the new drive up here. You can see where it goes across the ball diamond, comes up and goes back out. Freshman area, secure entrance, physical fitness gymnasium expansion, 2-story classroom addition there. And this is just looking at a little bit different perspective. You can see the different additions. And what we're going to do is put a canopy on that structure that's out front because it provides no relief from the weather as it exists. It's just a structure. It has no top on it, so we're going to put a top on it. And this is just looking to the west. If you're standing on the baseball field or the softball field, this is what you'd see. We're going to match the existing building. Kind of boring, but it would look a little weird if we did something different, making a building addition that didn't match. So that's the 2-story addition. You can see the PE addition right there. And the last slide here is if you're looking at the new freshman entrance, this is the secure entrance. Now I will say these windows will probably go away because it is now going to be a tornado safe area. And so, you can see the music building here, and this is the cafeteria here. So this is just a nice infill, worked out real well to put that there. So how does it break down? This is the last slide. How does it break down in cost? $89 million is all in. That's land acquisition. That is the buildings, obviously. It's the demolition costs associated with tearing down, part of Baldwin. And it includes all the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the tables, the chairs, everything that's in the building, all the technology is figured into this $89 million. And I will tell you that, one of the questions that comes up is, what do you do if you have cost overruns? When you put this out to bid, what do you have cost overrun? Well, we've figured in $7.2 million, almost 10%. Of contingency. So what does that mean? Well, if we have a little bit of cost overrun, if there's something we need to, let's say the land price is a little bit higher than what we anticipated, we have $7.2 million that's just a slush fund sitting there, but it's part of the $89 million. If you don't spend the money, it doesn't get spent. It comes back to the district. It's just not used. So how does it break down? Well, Quincy High School is a $16 million project. Monroe School, because we already have the land, we already have the infrastructure, is $14.2 million. And then we have 3 new sites with new K-5 buildings. Those are $15.6 million apiece. And then we have the Baldwin School project, which is $12 million, for a total of $89 million. So, that is it. Now, one of the things that is talked about too, and I'll just address it, and somebody might have it as a question, but well, why don't you build one of these buildings one at a time? Why don't we try a building and then we'll move on and we'll try another building maybe 5 years later or 10 years later and do this in stages? Well, with the way it's being proposed, by law, we have to have the $89 million obligated within a 5-year period. That's just the way it is. So the other part of this is because we're changing the grade structure, it'd be very difficult to build a new K-5 building at Monroe School. When it's K-5, now we still have a K-3 structure, so we'd have kids jumping back and forth, and it doesn't lend itself well because of the change in the grade configuration. So how do we do this? Well, we've got the land at Monroe. That's obviously where the first K-5 would go. One of the first projects would also be to do the work at Quincy High School. We want to get the freshmen out there as soon as possible, so that could start as early as next summer. We could get the freshmen out there. We could get the sixth graders then to junior high, and now we're going to build the K-5s. We've got one started at Monroe. We'd stagger these because the labor force, we want to make sure that the labor force can handle the work, because we'd like to keep, not that we can control that, but we'd like to keep as much labor here locally. So it'd be a staggered approach. We'd start a building. We'd start another building maybe 6 months later or 8 months later, and it's going to depend on land acquisition. So we move right on around. We build our 4 new schools, and then when that's done, as we're building these, kids are coming back out of Baldwin back to their respective school, and when it's all said and done, we do the work at Baldwin School, and that's the construction cycle that we would see, and it's going to take 5 years, but it's because of the size and the magnitude of the project. So let's go to questions.
Yeah, we'll have Joel Murphy come up, business manager of the school district, to talk a little bit about the bond issue. I always find when you give the architecture guys a microphone, they spend so much time in an office with a drafting board and a computer that they just keep on talking. But it's interesting. They're so excited about what they've done and really enthusiastic, and I think proud of the work that they have done, rightfully so. And Todd and we have more of the architecture crew and group in the back representing the 3 groups that worked with us, are more than happy to answer any questions that you may have, not only tonight but out on the streets if you see them. Maybe bother them at dinner too. But we appreciate their help. Also, I want to throw out Quincy Journal is live streaming tonight, and if obviously you're not watching it now, but later on if someone has any questions or if someone wished they could have been here and can't, it will be on the Quincy Journal site. So we appreciate the Goff spending the time to do that tonight. So Joel, I'll turn the microphone over to you.
What a finance guy does not want to hear is slush fund. So that's all we're going to hear tomorrow in the paper is we're establishing a slush fund for the school district. So anyways, I'm going to read you what basically is the official ballot language that you will see when you go to the polls in November. And I'm doing this on purpose because we're very careful in developing this language so that it was very clear what we're going to be doing with the taxpayers' money and what we're asking you permission to do. It reads, shall the Board of Education of Quincy School District number 172, Adams County, Illinois, acquire land, improve the site of, and build and equip 3 new elementary school buildings, demolish the Monroe Elementary School building, improve the site thereof, and build and equip a new elementary school building thereon, improve the site of, build and equip additions to, and alter, repair, renovate, and equip the Baldwin Intermediate School building, and build and equip a new elementary school building at said site. Improve the site of, build, equip additions to, and alter, repair, renovate, and equip the Quincy Senior High School building, alter, repair, equip, and provide technology improvements to existing school buildings of said school district, and issue bonds of the said school district in the amount of $89 million for the purpose of paying the cost thereof. That is the official ballot language. And again, we did this so that we laid out exactly what we were going to be doing with the money. There really isn't a whole lot of guesswork with because that's the way it's in the ballot. That's all we can use the money for. And we want to make very clear that we're not going to sell the bonds and then do something different than what we've told everybody that we're going to be doing. It's on the ballot. This is what we have to do. Why are we doing bonds? Well, that's basically the only option a school district has, or one of the limited options a school district has to raise funds for capital projects like this is to sell bonds. If you think of a bond in a way a little bit like a mortgage, where we have to go out and finance, as you went out and financed your home and such, this is a way for the school district to finance their new construction. Obviously, we pay interest on that money, and that's all part of the process of selling the bonds. The dollars that we can use the bonds can only be used for the construction and construction-related things. I can't pay teachers out of it. I can't pay administrators out of it. It is basically used to build the buildings, and it's very restricted to that area. Let's see, why would we have to go for a referendum to do this? That by law, for us to be able to build a building like this, we have to have public permission for it. Even in cases where buildings have been destroyed with tornadoes and stuff like that, they still have to go to referendum, even though it might be being paid for totally with insurance dollars. They still need to receive public permission to build the buildings. So this is something with Illinois that you have to do, and that's why we're doing it. Again, the total amount we've been asking for is the $89 million. Probably the biggest question out there is how will this affect my property taxes? The goal that we went into this in working with our financial advisors to develop a schedule is to develop a schedule that would not increase the overall tax rate. And so what our tax rate is today, and my mind just drew a blank exactly where we're at, a little over $4, that is the tax rate that we're projecting moving forward. That is also based upon a 2% increase in the EAV. On an annual basis to be able to target that tax rate. So again, we're dealing with the fact that our goal is in this process is to be able to raise the $89 million, but then also not to increase the tax rate, the total tax rate for the school district. Now, obviously, if your house goes up in value, your taxes are going to go up. That's part of the system of property taxes. But if the value of your home doesn't go up or doesn't change, your property taxes then will not go up based upon the fact that we're doing this project. Let's see here, just a couple. I think Todd touched on it earlier in regards to the budget and such. I mean, what's in there, the $89 million, is what we have to spend. We can't go over that $89 million. I can't, a year from now say, oops, we goofed, we're going to do $90 million or $100 million. I can't do that. We're stuck with the $89 million. We have to live within that amount. So if for whatever reason the bids don't come in right or something doesn't happen, we have to go back to the drawing board and pare things down so we fit within that dollar amount. So basically, from my perspective, that's it. I tried to keep to the facts. So
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
While we get kind of our panel assembled on stage, and we have one more person that hasn't had the microphone yet, and Joel, you can stay up here if you want. Raquel Piazza is a Quincy High graduate and also the Madison School PTA president. So we thought we needed a female to balance out the testosterone on the stage. So Raquel will come out and join us. As we are going through, as you guys are queuing up, and you can start, if you have questions, you can start lining up. I just want to hit three common questions that have been raised thus far. Number one is where the new school is going to be. I think we touched on that a little bit. It's going to be determined. If you look at kind of the site map of where our students live, actually about 2/3, I believe it is, Joel, live between 24th Street and the river. So if you think, boy, let's put the schools out by the bypass and think of all the land we'll have and we can do whatever we want, that doesn't serve our population's needs. So again, we will have to be looking for land closer to 24th Street to the river for at least some of the schools. And the purchase price for that land is figured into the bond money. Why can't we use old schools? I was raised in Madison School as a K through 6. 3 of my kids went to Madison as K through 3. We loved it. It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful building. It's not a beautiful school building, I don't believe, anymore. So looking at, is it worthwhile upgrading the schools we have and spending about $50 million over 20 years just on upkeep, putting Band-Aids on the situation, really, to end up 20 years from now with schools that are 120 years old is maybe not the right way to utilize $50 million. So looking at the money saved and just the life safety cost to upgrade and keep the schools up and running, One of the biggest things that you may not think about, but if you ever drive down Main Street around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't take you long to realize that we've got kids crossing Main Street getting into Madison School, and I use Madison School as kind of my home base, but we've got kids crossing busy streets, whether it's 8th Street, whether it's Main Street, to get to and from school. Things have changed. When I was a kid, I walked to school. My mom made me walk uphill both ways. And that doesn't happen anymore. So looking at safety and how we want to drop our kids off, both from buses and from private transportation, we need to do a better job keeping our kids safe. So looking at some of the old buildings, we just can't do it. We can't do it in the current location, and we can't even do it if we started to buy up property around, say, the schools that currently exist. Some of the older buildings may be used, the spaces may be used, or the property may be used for offices or, say, a transportation department or something. Here's a big one that I want people to understand, is we're heading forward with this bond referendum that really came from the school board, and supported by, I don't even know if that's legal to say, but came from kind of the school administrative staff. The problem is once they vote to put it on the ballot on November 4th, they can only speak factual about the issue. They can't say whether they're for or against it. There's 2 laws that basically cover that, the Election Code's Interference Prohibition, State Officials and Employees Act, both cover and limit really what they can and can't say. And it's even to the point where if I go as a private citizen that's in charge of this committee, I always ask before I talk to Steve Cobb or Joel Murphy, I'm here as a football booster club president, not as a referendum person, because I don't want to get anyone into trouble. So it's very restrictive on what our school board and our school administration can do, including principals. School teachers during the school day can be factual information people, but they cannot say for or against. As soon as they leave the building, they can put a button on, they can put a bumper sticker on, they can help us or work against us if they so wish, which we hope doesn't happen. But as long as they are in the school building at work, they cannot do it. If they go to a football game on Friday night and they're working the football game as security, they cannot speak for or against it. But if it is a teacher that's at the game as a citizen, then they can speak for or against it. So it's a little bit odd. I think heading into the gubernatorial elections and then coming down for the presidential election, don't we wish we could gag those guys for a while and not have them speak for or against their own. But anyhow, that's why you will not see unbelievable support for the issue pouring out of the school districts, and I just want to make sure that that's by state law. It may not be how they feel, but it's by state law. They cannot, they can disseminate facts, but they can't be for or against the issue. So we'll open it up to questions now. If anyone has questions or concerns, please bring them forth. Raquel, you can come up. Yeah. Sorry. Jeff?
Yes. You said you're using an EAV growth of 2%. When was the last time we actually had annual EAV growth, equalized assessed value growth, over 2%? I know the last few years have been like 0.6, 0.3, 1.31. When was the last time we were over 2%?
4 years ago, Jeff. 4 years ago.
4 years ago, okay.
It was, I'm sorry, I didn't have my papers here. I could tell you exactly what it was, what dates, but, so it's 4 years.
Since we've had over 2%.
And that was almost a 3% increase that particular year.
Okay. Do you know how many times, like in the last 10 years, we've had been over 2%?
Over in the last 10 years, we've only not one time been over 2%.
But in the last...
since 2010, there has only been 1 year in that 10-year period where we were not over 2%.
Except for the last 4 years. We were 1.31,
Yep.
0.6, 0.3. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Maybe somebody else has some questions.
Yep. We'll try to limit the first go-around to one question per person, and then if we have time, we'll go again. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question on the new freshman part of the high school. Was it discussed whether or not to make that a two-story building, or so that you would have extra space in the future if you would need it?
Well, yes, to answer your question, it was talked about. There was about, I don't know how many different options we came up with senior high school for the addition. But from an economic standpoint, I mean, it was an economy situation. Now, that doesn't mean you can't put a second floor on it later if the structure is built for it. But for economics right now, it's just the single story. Plus, yeah, and one other thing is because it is a tornado shelter, that made a difference also.
Any others? We have 3 more public forums coming up. They are in the paper and in the news media. And again, if you look at our website, that will be being built as time goes on, and more information on that. So we're available. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but the question is about the art and music for the 4th and 5th graders. I was in the first cycle when we were all sold that Baldwin was the way to go because art, music, science, computers could all be consolidated in one building for economy of scale, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's looking as though the 4th and 5th graders at least will still have art and music, but that still won't happen for K through 3 as a separate class.
No, that's not true. We currently have general music for K3 at the K3 buildings right now, and then they go to and they get that twice a week for 30 minutes. And when they move to Baldwin, it's moved to 40 minutes, and part of that is to have some increased time for instrumental music. And the way Baldwin works right now is that while some students are in instrumental music, the other students are in the general music, so they kind of run classes concurrently going on in that regards. One of the things, as Todd had talked about, we met today with the music staff to kind of figure out how we can make the building work, and we've come up with some different options, and that we'll basically have the same program that we're doing now for music between the elementary buildings and the Baldwin. We'll have that essentially the same program that the 5 elementary buildings operating. The ability to bring the K3 in for twice a week music, and the ability to bring 4th and 5th grade in for instrumental music, band and orchestra, and also for general music in that regards. Art, as far as addressing the art part of it, art will still be at those buildings, particularly at the 4-5, and most likely we'll be able to expand it to the K3 in some form. It will be an art on a cart type of situation, but there will be a workspace and storage space specifically for the art teachers to store the materials, to store the student materials, kiln, and those types of things in the building. So where I think after our discussion today with the fine arts people and such, that we've got a good plan going forward.
Okay, I apologize. I misspoke. I was talking about instrumental music at
Yep.
Baldwin. So there'll be instrumental music for 4th and 5th graders at these individual grade schools.
Yes.
So you'll have traveling music teachers?
We have traveling music teachers right now.
I know, but I mean, is that how they're going to?
The exact schedule and how it would work out is not laid out at this point, but it was an agreement today with all the music staff that this is a very workable plan for them.
So the kids will not lose out on whatever they're getting at Baldwin right now?
No,
beyond
definitely not.
anything
Definitely not. In fact, one of the things we will continue to do is to bring them together at least once a week. And logic tells us to bus them to Baldwin. We'll be busing them to Baldwin at least once a week to continue that after-school band opportunity and such. So we're back. As I was told today, we used to have an all-city band and an all-city orchestra, as it was called. We'll be back to having that type of a program going.
Okay,
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know that I'm not an antiquated person asking this question, but do the schools still have libraries, and will they have book places for libraries and so forth?
The libraries have as a physical space within the buildings have decreased, and they're for lack of a term, their importance in the daily instruction of students has decreased. Where the emphasis now is more on in-classroom libraries, and so that the appropriate books and things like that are within the classroom, the level reading libraries. One of the great things, I can't say that, sorry, I'll back up here. One of the options and uses of the teaming spaces that are built into the plans is to have the availability of having books and library materials out there so that each communities can access shared library materials in that area. So.
Okay. And I hate to ask another question, but I assume that one of the main factors with these elementary schools is to maintain the neighborhood concept with them, and I can't think of land that's available that size, and is demolition involved in the money that you've put aside?
There are dollars built into the budget for land acquisition, and that's a factor that we'll have to look at as far as what land is available and what it would take to bring that land to a point where we can build on it. Unfortunately, we can't say, we have a site here, here, and here, because there are discussions that we're having with other entities to see what might be best and what might work out for the school district and what's available.
There's actually more property in talking to the people that know out there and available than what you and I think, because I was the same way. Where are you going to put these? We're talking about building or needing bigger pieces of property. Where are you going to put them? Quincy seems pretty tight from 24th Street to the river, but there are some neat options that I know that are available for the school district, and we will be better serving our kids that way too. And I think the concept of a neighborhood school has definitely changed. I mean, again, when I was a kid, we walked to school. I walked to all the 3 different schools I attended, and now you don't as much. But we want to keep the neighborhood, meaning that you kind of go to school with the kids you live around, whether or not you walk there or not, or want to walk there or not. But that's our goal.
I know that was always one of the disagreements parents seem to have about Baldwin, that they lost that neighborhood concept.
Right. And on the other hand, then you have the economies of scale, that you can put on a much possibly different auditorium show. You can have visiting people come in and hit more kids in an hour-long presentation. You have the music that's all together, but you suffer by having to bus people all over God's creation. So, two very good questions. That yes, John.
I really appreciate all the very thorough planning it sounds like you've done, but Todd, can you clarify a little more about, it almost feels like every one of those K-5 centers would have to be ready to go in order to implement the changeover to that kind of a system. So I'd like for you to clarify when and how you start to use those buildings, and especially how do you get by with the demolition of parts of Baldwin in order to get it ready to go again. So if you could just kind of clarify a little bit more of that.
Sure. And maybe I'll answer your second part first. With Baldwin, well, let me back up. With Quincy High School, older students, more responsible, we envision Quincy High School starting as early as next summer. They can get the infrastructure in and barricade it off, and they can continue to work through the year, and students will not be in harm's way. Baldwin's different, though, because obviously that's a major disruption to that area. And so by the time, now going to your first part, how do we do that? Well, if we're building K-5s in somewhat of an order, maybe staggered by 6 or 8 months, as a K-5 is completed, the students that are in that bound or in that area that would go to that school, say Monroe School, for example, they would then go to that K-5. They would not be at Baldwin, obviously. So Baldwin's going to continue to move down. Now, at the very end, you're going to have a couple hundred students left at Baldwin because Baldwin has to be constructed. So what we've talked about as an option, maybe Adams School and or Madison School could be used as a year-long place for those students until Baldwin is complete.
Yes, sir.
Currently, I believe the first grade and kindergarten classes are pretty much maxed out on, you're right at that 24, 25 range. And if we're only matching, one grade school for each of the existing grade schools, is there any thought given to future enrollment being greater than it is now?
So like an expansion possibility to the schools?
Or does one of these new facilities need to have, instead of 4 classrooms, does one of these new facilities need to be built with 5 classrooms to handle any future growth in enrollment?
It would be ideal if we could build that extra space. Unfortunately, it's an economics consideration now. The way these are laid out is we're not going to back ourselves into a corner where we can't expand. So if you remember the plan, we've got the communities and the classrooms. Those buildings could be expanded then if we needed to add on a classroom or 2. So we're leaving that option open down the road. We're not going to shoehorn ourselves into a site that we can't do that.
Because like I say, right now the first grade and kindergarten classes, they are maxed out in most every school. And if you just get just a little bit more enrollment in each of the schools, you are going to all of a sudden have your teachers with more students than they want and larger than what the rooms are designed for.
Right. That's a good question. And right now we've got ample capacity for the enrollment plus some growth. But if we really get the growth, then we could add on to the schools at that time.
Okay.
But you looked out at the growth in what the population has been doing over the last number of years and kind of planned a little built-in fudge factor or whatever as far as size of buildings, right? I mean, we're not going to move, I guess the bottom line is we're not going to move into these buildings and be jam full, hoping that no kids are born the next month because we'll be tilted over. So that, from what I can gather, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of built into it.
Yes,
The schools will be not underutilized, but they will not be packed to the gills when we open them up. And the population of Quincy has pretty much stayed fairly stable since I was a kid. Anyone else? Questions?
What are you planning for student-teacher ratio?
Me? You looked at me like I was supposed to know. Yes, we're going to have students and teachers in every classroom.
The basis of the, at this point, is a 1 to 25. And we're planning on 25 students per classroom. Each level. Now, obviously, as populations change and kids come through, there may be a class of 26, 27, and there may be classes of 23, 22. And kind of to piggyback on that last question, one of the things that we will do once we get into start this process, if it is successful, would be to look at the boundaries of the district and try to develop a boundary system that balances out the enrollment, so we don't necessarily have a large population, trying to go into one single school, that we're able to balance out the population between schools.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Could you give me an idea, please, of what $66 million is going to be spent for if we have to stay as we are now? I was surprised to find that there had been $50 million spent over the past 20 years, so I'm just wondering what has to be fixed.
Right. We've actually gone through each school and identified dollar amounts for these schools. But if you look at all the components of a building and a site, you've got all the different categories from the brick facade, the windows, the doors, the roofs, and then you get into the systems, the mechanical systems, the boilers, the piping, the plumbing pipes, the plumbing fixtures. You get into site conditions. Is the concrete cracked? I mean, there's all these different areas have a dollar attached to them, so those dollars add up very quickly. So we looked at the condition of each building and said, okay, when do we think that's going to occur? And we've got a pretty good track record, obviously, with the $52 million that was spent in the last 20. So that's how we arrived at the $66 million. And when you look at we've got 1.2 million square feet in this district, and so it doesn't take long for those numbers to add up pretty quick. But those numbers are identified for each school.
And Todd, does that have anything to do if we stay with the old buildings or try to make them handicap accessible or
Yes.
different restrooms?
Yes.
Because we have restrooms on the first or the basement floor only in some of the buildings.
Right. We've got some serious ADA issues in our schools. Now, the district accommodates that for those students, but some of our schools, as you know, when you come in the building, you go up or you go down. And so ADA is an issue.
Well, could you, give me some sort of an idea. Like, for example, you're stuck with what you've got. What has to be addressed next year? I'm assuming maybe Ellington needs some serious work. Adam, I don't even know which school is the oldest.
Right. Well, for example, Adams School has an old boiler system, 1950s vintage. That boiler needs to be replaced. Now, you get into, okay, do you want to put new boilers in when we have window air conditioners in a lot of the areas? So, do you really want to use window air conditioners? They're loud, they're noisy, they distract from the students. So, you look at, okay, we'll put a centralized system in. Makes sense. So, for example, 44,000 square feet at Adams School. You're looking at about $30 a square foot, probably for a mechanical system. You're at $1.2, $1.3 million just in that one item.
Okay, that's the kind of thing I'm talking
Yes.
about. And then Ellington would have to be, is that one of the schools that has girls' bathrooms on one floor and boys on the other? Or something like that?
That would be like a Madison School
Okay.
or a Dewey. So now, is that a health, life, safety issue? No, and that's not in the dollars to put restrooms up on other floors. But so that's not that doesn't qualify, right? That's just an inconvenience. And we've heard from the teachers that, for example, at Dewey School, it's a 20-minute venture each in the morning and afternoon for that person to take their students all the way down, use the restroom, come back up. So it's 20 minutes each round trip. Yeah, exactly. Lost school time.
If I could ask one other question about the K through 5 busing situation. I've had a couple of people say to me, Quincyans don't want to recognize this, but I don't want my kindergartner on a bus with fifth graders unless there's going to be an 8 on that bus or unless there's going to be some sort of assigned seating and all the kindergartners are up front. Has that been addressed?
Actually, what you just said is what we do right now. We have all our kindergarten kids are assigned a seat in the front of the bus. All our kids are actually assigned seats.
Okay.
The adding the third and fourth grade on there, that's something that is done on a daily basis across this country. We actually, believe it or not, we have kindergarten or first grade kids riding with junior high kids. A lot of our parochial kids that ride buses, some of them are, because of where they're going and stuff like that, the efficiency we put them on to a junior high bus. So, okay. And not every parent at the parochial school is happy about that either. But
okay, all right, thank you.
Question, Mike?
We've heard about the cost of building new schools, and we've heard potential costs for repairing the schools. The proposed plan for building new schools calls for fewer elementary schools. What kinds of savings should we expect from any reduction in administrative staff or operating the schools if we go to the new ones?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that because I failed to mention it. And we've estimated, based on the square footage reduction, the increase in energy efficiency, the reduction of just labor and maintenance costs in each of these buildings, we're going to save about $11.2 million over the 20-year cycle. So it's a little about $550,000 a year.
Okay, so although we're going to pay $89 to build them, we are going to also have $11 million of savings during that time period as well?
That's correct. That's correct. And that's just operational utility and labor maintenance in the buildings.
Yes, sir.
I had a question maybe two questions about the tax rate. You made a big point that the tax rate will not be increased, but without this bond issue, there would definitely be a tax decrease, right, with the old bonds being paid off?
that's correct.
And to make two questions into one, you've done a good job of the plan. I think you've got a good plan, but it's a big plan. And I see where things could go unexpected in the next couple of years, so that you're limited with your cost overruns and all that, but you're not restricted to a new bond issue, or what's the prospect for another bond issue in a couple of years? Too many questions?
No, I'm trying to formulate my answer here for you. there's nothing, the only thing that's limiting us from going out for any additional bonds would be our bonding capacity, what we have as a district. And that bonding capacity is based upon a percentage of the EAV. And so, as our EAV would increase, we would have room within bonding capacity if we had to go out and issue bonds. We don't anticipate the need to issue any additional bonds in that time period that we can see right now. So,
Okay, and then will we ever see what our tax decrease would be without this bond issue, or know what bonds are being paid off?
I could show you a schedule if you'd like to, of what our bond pay, what the payoff is. So, I don't have it on the slide here, but I'll be happy to sit down and go through the numbers.
Any other questions?
Yes, if you're ready for the second round.
Go ahead. It's after 8 o'clock, guys, so if you need to skedaddle, that's okay. It won't
What
hurt
are
our
the
feelings, but we'll
estimates of
stay
the
here and
fees
take
for
questions.
architecture, financial advisors, brokers, and underwriters? I've heard numbers thrown around, 7% of the hard costs. So if it's 70 million, that'd be 4.9 million. If it's 80 million, it'd be 5.6 million in the architectural alone. I've heard financial advisor broker fees of $275 per thousand, if I heard correctly, about $245,000 in that, and I know the fees have already, and then of course the underwriter fees. Has there been a running total? What's the total fee cost going to be? Architectural, financial advisor, financial broker, and underwriter, and any other fees? Do you have is there a bottom line number that you have on that, or an estimate?
No, but we'll get you one, Jeff.
Okay. Do you think it'll be over the 6.2 million that we borrowed in the other last referendum? Do you think is already?
I'm not understanding your question.
Well, we recently borrowed 6.2 million. I understand we still owe the 6.2 million. Is that when you add up all the fees, will they be higher than the 6.2 million that you borrowed last time?
I can't answer the question. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, I thank you for coming tonight. Again, our goal is to reach out and speak to and answer as many questions, speak to as many people and answer as many questions as we can. We obviously are a private group. We are looking to raise funds, so look on our website. If you want to donate, I'm more than happy to take money. But again, think about Quincy as a whole and not just the kids, not just adults, not just senior citizens, not just the youth, but what this could do for Quincy as a whole. And I think there's a lot of different plans. I mean, Jeff was on our committee with us, and we thought about a new high school. We thought about doing it with the junior high. We thought about doing it with Baldwin Gym, believe it or not. So everything came to the table. There's a lot of different ideas out there. I think we need to do something, and this is, I think, an awesome something to do to head our kids and head our community forward and in the right direction. So we appreciate you coming tonight. Please keep in touch for questions, for concerns, and hopefully for positive things as well. So thank you very much.